Morning, afternoon, evening, exactly noon for some people.
Yes. Time zone
Everybody.
appropriate greeting.
Yes, yes. Good daytime log name. Um, how is everyone doing? It is welcome to Run Zero Hour episode X 13, which is 19 in freedom units.
Mhm.
What did we discover 13 was? It was for ASCII control codes.
Yeah, you cheated, Rob. You looked it up.
I did. I looked it up. It's
It was
device
like
control
command, yeah,
3.
yeah,
Yeah.
device control 3, whatever that is.
Sure. Yeah. If you need to control your device, that's the yep.
In a third
Uh,
way.
in a third way, right, right. If one and two aren't enough, that's what you. Yep. No. So yes, welcome everyone. I am so glad to see you all here. We are streaming live through the magic of the internet on multiple things. We have chat open for questions. So yes, my name is Rob King. I am the director of security research here at runZero, and I am joined by Todd Beardsley, known as Tothrandir among the elves. He is our
Wow.
vice president of security research. And we have a very, very special guest today, Jerry Gamblin, who is a principal engineer at Cisco, where he works on threat detection and response. So, Jerry, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So, today we're going to be talking a little bit about the vulnerability landscape with uh, LLMs and MCPs and all sorts of newfangled things to make vulnerability intelligence more intelligent. So, yeah, I know. I see. We're getting air quotes already. So this is okay. All right,
Already.
Todd.
Yep.
Okay. So Jerry, you wrote the villain from Tron. Is that what I heard? The
I
MCP.
did. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
I had to go look that reference up because I hadn't seen the movie in a while, but yes, I did.
oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's just jump right into MCPs because
Yeah.
I think everybody is hearing about those and trying to
Mm-hmm.
understand what they are. You might have heard agentic AI thrown around too. Uh, People in the AI space can't name stuff, and it changes every 3 to 6 months. So when you hear agentic or MCP, just think of API because that is really all it is you're writing a small script, normally in Python, that sits in the background and gives the LLM the ability to make an API call on your behalf with your token. So if you want to chat about CVEs like I did, if you put a CVE into a chat, it will go out and say, hey, I can go and pick up the NVD API or the EPSS API or the CVE test API, right? And bring all that data
Mm-hmm.
together and give you a smart answer. We used to build stuff called RAGs, where you'd have to train a model and you would say, here is every bit of CVE information, learn all of this, and then try to spit it back out when somebody talks to you. It has to be a specialized, has to be a specialized model. API MCPs change that, and Agentic changes that, which allows you to have the best base model. So you can use ChatGPT 4.0 or Claude or Gemini models and
Mm-hmm.
use all the intelligence that it has and communications and formatting, and then just feed it your security data on the back end and have it presented in a good way, right? So a lot of people are using it for not public matters only. Like you could use it like if you have an API that will hook into your vulnerability management system or
Mm-hmm.
to your SOC and say, hey, here's a SOC report. Please look through this, look up all the IP addresses in this report, tell me what you think about it, and then give me an opinion on if I should worry about this or not.
So,
Okay.
so with an MCP, then, what does MCP stand for? Did I just miss it? Oh.
Model context protocol.
Novel Context Protocol. Okay, so you build this MCP thing, which is really just an API, and well, it's an API of APIs, right? Like, is that a way
Yes.
to think about it? Okay.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to do any of the like pre-training garbage that you have to do with models. So like you don't make your own custom multi-million dollar GPU model.
Correct.
You leech off of other people, right? And
Yep.
leech is a strong.
Yep.
Uh, But you can say like, oh yeah, like you say, like, oh, look up NVD over NVD's API. And NVD's API is actually really good.
Yep.
And so you're telling your local LLM, whatever that is, like you say, it could be Claude, it could be ChatGPT 4.0, whatever. Also use this data basically. So it's additive.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
instead of training a model, it's just in time data retrieval, basically,
Okay.
so that it can be up to date at all the time. Yep.
All right. Well, that sounds useful, Jerry.
Yeah.
Have you
And
have you used it for something useful?
Yeah, I use it all the time, right? Like, um, I have a model built and it's doesn't uses NVD and the EPSS data and a couple other open source APIs. So when somebody wants to know about a CVE, you can just go ask the model, hey, what do you know about this CVE? Write me a short report. It'll go and it'll pull down all the information and then format a nice markdown report that you can
Mhm.
share with people or post. It really just
okay.
allows you to automate your workflow, right? We talk a lot about tier 0 workers, and that's what AI is replacing. It's not the tier 1 intelligence workers. We're really trying to get it back to
Right.
tier 0, where it's the thing that anybody can do, but it just takes time, right? So instead of calling 6 different APIs and getting all the data and putting it together, this can just automatically make those calls and put together a report. But we've been doing that for 25 years, right? Like your GitHub and my GitHub and everybody's GitHub on this calls is full of scripts that we've written to do it to do basically this, right? But now we're just giving that output to an AI and say, hey, please make this pretty for me.
So, and this is maybe a silly question, just for my own education here. So, how would MCP fit with automated machine consumable documentation for APIs in general? Like, you've got does it consume? Can it consume that directly as well, or?
No, it's basically just a Python script, and
Mhm,
then the Python you tell VS Code or Claude Desktop or whatever that like
mm,
here's the Python script, and if I mention a CVE ID in my request, you know that to go look up
I see.
CVE, right?
I
Or
see.
if I ask about a file hash, I want you to go
Hmm.
talk to Virus Total about that. So you basically just prime it and say, look for these keywords, and if it's a
Hmm.
keyword, then activate this MCP.
I see. Okay. That makes more sense. It's yeah. The future is now. I'm waiting for I'm waiting for the agents to start talking to each other, and then we
Yeah, just cut us out
we
completely.
just the humans, we become superfluous. It'll be great, right?
Mhm.
All sci-fi has taught me that this will lead us to a wonderful future where the robots will not take over. So that's good.
That's right.
Oh
Post-scarcity
yeah,
utopia.
and yeah, people are dropping all kinds of good things about the security implications of MCPs and agentic into the chat, and they're exactly right, right? Like you have to be very careful because you're letting an AI model act as you, right?
Hmm.
You've given it access to your API keys. So
Hmm.
if it's something that's monitored or something that you have delete on, right? You might not want to do that. But if you're just
Hmm.
saying, hey, go call this public API with no authentication, it's normally okay.
Right.
Hmm.
All right, I have two questions chambered now. One is, so the MCP itself is not doing any like editorializing, or it doesn't do its own summary. All that's doing is like pulling in whatever the blob is on the other end of the API, right?
It
All
pulls in the
editorial.
JSON blob, and then you pick then you pick the stuff that you want to send, so you don't have to send it all. So like
Mhm.
you pick out the 15 data points that you want to send to the AI model, and then then the AI model figures out how to present it.
Okay, and that's the thing that would be doing any kind of summarization
Yeah,
or whatever. And so that's the thing to look at for hallucinations and
yeah,
too many M dashes, things
yeah.
like that. All right.
Yeah, you can set some system prompts to kind of help it along, but at the end of
Uh,
the day, the base LLM model is the boss and will decide how to produce and what to produce.
okay, cool. And you're not suggesting like I mean, it sounds like this is and then when you get that end result, right, from the base LLM, like that's the thing that goes to the analyst to say, like,
Yeah.
these are the things to look for. I'm always real sketchy about like, oh, I'm just gonna go pull from these three sources and then cobble it together with an LLM and then ship that to the customer.
Oh no,
Like,
there always has to be a human in the loop,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
that's where you always try to make sure nobody is willing to do that. I worked in the vulnerability management space for a long time, and I still do. And like you'll hear people with startup ideas, hey, I'm going to build a startup that's just going to auto patch everything, and then they go try to sell to an enterprise, and they're like, oh wow, enterprises won't let me auto patch 70,000 Linux servers without testing, right? Like they still want the human in the loop to push the button. Um, so even if we can get to the point where AI can do that, very, very, very few enterprises are ever going to hit the button to say, hey,
Hmm.
let completely unfiltered AI data go to the customers, right?
Mhm.
You
We
have to
have
have
this
someone you can yell at. Like
we
there
have
has
this
to.
talk all the time, right? Like internally, the gold standard for an AI model is 90% correctness. Um,
Okay.
and you
Cool.
know, which is a low A in school, right? But like
Right.
you're starting about shipping a product, like I don't
Hmm.
want one out of every 10 things I tell a customer to be
To
false,
be
right?
wrong.
So yeah, yeah, so you really have to sit there and make sure that the models that you are doing and the data that you are giving is really, really locked down. And yeah, so we had a big thing where AI chatbots were cool and everybody was launching them without enough testing. And then people said, hey, this thing isn't helping. It's actually making our call times and data longer. So we're going to pull those back, right? So you see a lot less AI chatbots on websites than you did 6 months ago when it was the new hot thing that everyone had to have.
Right.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
All right. I have one other question, and that is with your implementation. It's maybe a two-parter with your implementation and a hypothetical implementation, right? You go, you get a CVE record, you're pulling descriptions, you're pulling references. Do
Yep.
you take that second hop to um, consuming the reference?
You
This
can.
is
I do
this
not.
this question is a trap, by the way.
Yeah, I know it. I do
It's
not.
nice to say.
Yeah.
I do not because it is a lot harder than it sounds. I use a tool
Hmm.
from I love an open source tool chain called LangChain. It
Mhm.
helps. It allows you to actually say, here are some URLs. Please go and safely fetch the data, put it into text, and then feed that text to
Right.
the model. But yeah, just letting AI loose on the web to pull down references isn't
And
a
that's,
big thing.
yeah. And I think it's still worth saying at this point in history, in middle 2025, right? It's like the references in CVEs should be considered attacker controlled. You know?
Hmm.
Well,
Hmm.
I will give everybody a free tip here that I use when using references off of the CVE list. I go and I pull the CNA list,
Uh-huh.
and then I just take the TLDs off that, and then that's my
Hmm.
safe list. And then if I'm automating anything, it can only pull references that match a TLD that's on the CNA list, right?
Ah,
Like,
okay.
it's not
Makes
perfect, but
sense.
it gives you some level of confidence that you're not letting a scraper or something go wild on pages that you don't want.
Hmm.
And you just hope that the CNAs are keeping their records up to date.
I
I mean,
hope.
I know some CNAs that I would not trust very far. So
Yeah,
that's.
Is one of
yeah.
those takeonme.org, Rob?
It is, in fact, it is. I think I'm technically a member. So,
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. So the reason why I bring it up, obviously, is because of link rot that happens in CVE references. Even whole domains go away and then get re-registered. I know of you probably know more about this than I do, actually, Jerry. I know of one case where a clutch of CVE references were hanging off a domain that went went free, went wild,
Yeah.
got re-registered by I want to say like some like gambling online gambling company. And so you go to all these references and you get ads, right, for this gambling
Yes.
thing. That is the most malicious thing I saw. I didn't see anything there's a technique called malrot where
Yep.
it's link rot, it's malicious link rot, not to be confused with malort, which is spelled almost exactly the same, also malicious. um,
You're from Chicago, definitely don't try that. If you're not from Chicago, it's the best thing in the world. Next time one of your friends offers it, please
mhm.
try.
No.
Yeah, it's
Mm-mm.
a dare.
Yeah.
But yeah, malrot does seem like it's certainly a hypothetical attack pattern because like you can do things like, oh, well, I'm just going to scrape all the CVEs, I'm going to scrape all the references, wait for domains to expire, grab the domains, and then mock up a advisory with like a download link of like, get the patch here.
Mhm.
And I haven't seen that actually in the wild yet. So don't take that advice. If you're a bad guy, just zip over this part.
So,
Taking
so
notes.
a question back to you then is,
Uh,
when do we stop looking at those records, right? Like the NVD recently decided that they're not going to go back and update anything after 2018. Should
yeah.
we, should that be a chopping block, right?
I don't know, man. Like, so the NVD, they're calling them the deferred CVEs,
Yeah.
deferred apparently infinitely. I know Gray Noise just published a paper on resurgent CVEs, which is really neat. Like, if you just look up Gray Noise resurgent, you'll find the paper. Um, but it's all about these CVEs that have been like not really cool for a while, and then you'll see like suddenly a bunch of scanning against like a 2008 CVE. What's up there? So like, so yeah, like I mean, if NVD is going to be in the business of like reading and republishing these things, like
Mhm.
it's hard to figure out how to use NVD when you know you have a giant blind spot like that,
Exactly.
right? Now, I think it's of dubious value of what NVD does provide anyway. Like they provide CPE strings, which everyone says they need and no one actually uses, as far as I can tell, because everyone rewrites them anyway. Um,
We use them. We would be, I mean,
yeah,
CPE. So
we can
in
get into
vulnerability
it. Let's get into
in
it.
vulnerability management, CPE strings are the only logical way to do non-invasive scanning on a machine, right? You run OS query, it tells you what is on there, and then you do a match to CPE. And I know people complain all the time about how poor CPEs are, but it's they are poor. Not a lot of them aren't right, but the ones that you need to know about, the ones from Google, the ones from Microsoft, the ones for Adobe, they are pretty well 90-95% correct. So there's not that's not bad, right? We got a what is it, a 26% growth year over year of CVEs. And yeah, it's not everything needs a CPE. I'm on the automated working group, and there's Perl, and then there's another standard
Perl with a U, right? So
Perl with a U.
and that's mostly for that's exclusively for open source stuff. Like you don't really have Perls for like Microsoft stuff,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Yeah.
it's mostly for software, right? Like I like to tell people when you start thinking about software identifiers for vulnerability records, you either have to say, hey, this is an app or an OS system I'm installing. That goes in one bucket. And then you
Mhm.
have this is code and libraries, and it goes in another bucket. And those two models just don't match, right? They're oil and water. They're definitely not something that we should be trying to, push open source libraries into CPEs or push Microsoft Windows 12 into Perl strings, right? We just need to make a clean cut and say, pick one identifier and use it.
Yeah. Now, I will say, I'll put on my CVE board member hat. CPEs and Perls are both optional arguments to give to CVEs. You have to say somehow, somewhere in the CVE record that this is what this affects. But how you say what is affected is up to you, the user.
Yep. And
And
nobody decides on what it is or how well it's written or anything along those lines, right? Like, and I don't know if you're baiting me or not, but
a little.
this this is great. I love to talk about this because you're a CVE board member. I'm not. I use CVE data all the time.
Right.
I am shocked by how poor the overall data set is and about how little data is actually required to publish a CVE. I gave a talk at VolCon about it. It's three fields are required and
Hmm.
none of them are monitored, right? Like the description length is between 1 and 10,048 characters or something, right? And like that's the only bit of
I think it's
monitoring.
two. I think
Two
you must
char
have two characters.
two
So
characters.
A is good, not
Yeah,
A.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So nobody's looking at quality, nobody's checking everything. So we're getting CVEs that are meeting minimal requirements and being published.
Mhm.
And then you have people on the other side, like everybody gets up in arms about the Linux kernel CVEs. I'm telling you, they're one of the best CNAs out there. You go and look
I
at one of you go and look at one of their descriptions, it actually tells you what the vulnerability is, right?
Yeah. And often has a stack trace, which is,
Yes.
unreadable in plain text, but you can figure it out, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think that they're trying. I've seen them ask on how to get marked down or something in the
Mm.
description field, and like it'll be interesting to see there. I'll do a little pitch for myself. I'm giving a talk at what is it, B-Sides Las Vegas on
mhm.
how CNAs are hiding in plain sight. Um, Microsoft is going to be one of my main targets. They
Yeah.
have switched how they describe their CVEs over the last 5 years, and most of it is just, you know, buffer overflow in blank. That's all they have in the description. It
Sure.
100% matches the CVE requirements, but you have no idea what it does, and they don't want you to know, right? So there's
Mhm.
no way to actually make an intelligence decision. If you're saying a CVE record is to educate people, to
Mhm.
help them understand their risk, these minimal CVEs that are barely meeting spec and hiding key details are doing the service, are doing the community a disservice in general.
And it's not just Microsoft,
No,
obviously.
no.
Like, Apple's notorious for this as well.
Yep.
Google is starting to slide down that path, I think.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like Microsoft is giving technically correct CVEs. Microsoft's such a funny CNA because on the one hand, they're really good about the CPE strings. Like they
Yes,
are
yes,
solid
they
and
are.
they'll give, if you ever read a Microsoft CVE, it's like kind of annoying because it's a one-line description, but like 20 lines of affected products. And
Yeah.
so and almost no one does that, right? Almost no one will put that out to that level of detail, like by as expressing them as CPE strings, as being comprehensive on like versions and stuff like that. Like they're super good at that, but then, but then on the same
I think
time,
they
the
realize a lot
description is
of
nonsense.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
think they realize a lot of vulnerability management companies rely on those CPE strings to do matching and patching. So they've
Right.
leaned really heavily into it. Yeah, I'm not anti-Microsoft CNA at all. Like
Yeah.
as a whole, they do a great job and they're within the boundaries. But like
Yeah.
as a researcher, if I put on my researcher hat and try to figure out like what this vulnerability actually does, what it, how it affects these products, there's no chance you'll know.
Now
And I
they do
understand.
provide, I will say they do provide CWE identifiers. They're equally vague, right? But that's essentially what the description comes down to is it's a cobbling together of CWE words and affected products sometimes.
Yeah.
So like I believe I won't speak for Microsoft or anything. But I believe Microsoft doesn't really find a ton of value in the free text description, whereas other people do, right? Like other
Mhm.
CNAs do. I'll point to takeonme.org, the Austin Hackers CNA. Like I put some effort into those descriptions. So
I think it really depends on what your audience is, right? And like maybe at some point CVEs become two records. You have a machine readable record, which is where
right,
Mhm.
Microsoft is leaning in, and you have a this is for us, right? This is like how you get all the data. Talk about to circle back around the link rot, right? Bug track was one of the number one links on CVEs for the first 10 years because that's where people would go and actually discuss what
right,
the CVE was doing and normally have a Perl or Python script
yeah.
right there anyway.
Used to be you could take a bug track ID and then find the mailing list thread based on
Yep.
that.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
And
That
there's Lisa listening, and
mhm.
we love Lisa and think she does a great job at
Yes,
Microsoft.
we do. So I guess okay, cool. So your MCP, anyway, this is a long answer to your MCP is not going to get poisoned by malicious links.
Yeah,
That's
no,
nice.
yeah,
Um, there is some like neutering, I think, in the CVE descriptions where I don't think it would be very difficult to pass up until the advent of LLMs, it would be very difficult to pass a CVE description that resulted in executable code, right?
yeah,
Mm.
Because it's all plain text. It all like you don't have like live links in there. There's like a section for markdown and all that, but
yeah.
almost no one uses it on purpose. Some people use it by accident. But in the advent of LLMs, like I can definitely see a CNA going crazy. And we have 400 and something CNAs. I guess I trust all of them to never say ignore all previous instructions.
Yeah. I mean, I really, really hope that's the cross-site scripting of 2025, the prompt injections.
Hmm.
Most good toolkits will say, if I'm passing this as text, just
Yeah.
read it as text. It doesn't get to inform the LLM, etc. It just it's just text, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, prompt injections I fear will be like cross-site scripting, super easy to fix technically, but you'll still see
And
them.
prolific.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you'll still see them,
Yeah.
right?
How much I wanted to pivot on one thing you said earlier, kind of as an aside of like, oh, the 20% year over year growth of like number of CVEs. What up with that? Is it your opinion that we should expect 20% year over year forever? Or do you think that this what like I've started looking at that too, right? And there I think Patrick Garrity from Vulnchat
Yep,
put together a
yep.
graph that said, hey, it's these four CNAs that have caused the growth. And so, and it's like Linux kernel, patch stack, I want to say VolDB is one of them, and then
And
some
GitHub.
other thing, right?
And it's
Oh,
the GitHub security
okay.
advisory, right?
Right. And so as long as those are not, increasing massively over time, which I don't think like Linux kernel will, it's probably pretty static. I don't think you'll see like oh, we're doing 20% year over year forever, rather than maybe we just saw this bump in the last couple of years and maybe it'll slow down after that.
No, I
Or not.
my personal feeling is you'll see closer to 50% growth here over the next 5 to 10 years
Oh yeah.
in CVEs. With automation and with the ease of use. GitHub Security Advisory is a great example of that, right? Like if
Mhm.
you open an issue on GitHub, you can request a CVE for that issue, right? Um, Perfectly fine, follows all the things. Madison and her team over there do a great job. They'll push it through and they'll get a CVE, etc. The issue comes down to, oh, is this valuable, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm not I'm not a big fan of like who thinks that we're at a point where people can't read the data, right?
Mhm.
I work with data scientists and big data people all the time, and when I tell them the data set I work with is 250,000 characters
Yeah.
or 250,000 records, they ask, "Oh, is that just today or this hour
Right.
or in
Right.
the last?"
Thank you, Jerry. Like I've been looking for confirmation of this, of like, because I've done some stuff lately with CVEs. I'm like, it's like, oh, it's like 280,000 records. And then I think, oh, that's like, a little more than a quarter of a million. Who cares? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I can still load it into a data frame in under 3 seconds,
yeah,
right? It is not
yeah.
The data is not large. As long as we keep the data quality up and increase the data quality, you know,
And
I
that's the
think,
trick, right?
yeah, yeah,
How do you increase data quality? And I know, so we were talking a little bit before the show about data quality and all that. And you, the theme had emerged of like, well, we don't want to discourage people to write CVEs, so we want to make the bar super duper low.
yeah.
But have we tried looking at that lately?
I don't think we have, and I don't like. There are a lot of issues with the CVE program. You're on the board, you know this, right?
I do.
The number one issue is the CVE program doesn't own the number one, the number two, or the number three CVE publishing tools in the world, right? They don't own Voltagram, they don't own any of those, right? And the way to make CVE records better by default is for the CVE program to own those programs and then build data into there, right? Like build smartness into those, right? So if I'm going and I'm the Austin Hackers Association, I'm going to file a CVE and I don't have a CWE in there, we're in 2025. It's super simple to have it, hey, read the description, use some basic data. There was a great talk at VulnCon on using description to get CWE and set that as the default CWE. Said, hey, this looks like the CWE. Do you want it?
Yeah.
Yes or no, right? Like, but
It's
until
CVE Clippy, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, that or hey, this doesn't look like a good description. Let's improve it, etc. Or yeah, I mean, there should be some smartness around how we publish CVEs today, and I think a lot of it starts with the program leaning more into the publishers and how their workflows work and building smartness into those.
I think operationally, and I think operationally, the CVE program is still stuck like 10 to 15 years ago, where it's like we're really, really, really focused on just getting people to participate. And I think
Mm.
we did it, right? We did it. Hooray. And I agree, Jerry, that we should do more. And by we, I mean like the people who have any influence over the CVE program should be doing more on ratcheting up that quality, starting to like put in just some, and we can do it slowly and we can do it with consensus and all that, right? But we can say like, hey, maybe it's now a requirement. And if you can't express your vulnerability as a CWE, maybe it's not a vulnerability, or maybe you're not the one to write this CVE, right? Like get a friend who knows how to Google around CWEs.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
I
know.
think we have to have a middle step where you just don't turn it on, and that's where I think some help, some automation tools to say, here's what I think it is, right?
Yeah, and provide the tooling.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be incredible. So
yeah. I mean, MITRE has been the largest CNA for the last 24 years, or the last what? Yeah, 20.
23 out of the last 25 years, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. This year they're going to be beat by PatchStack and by kernel.org, right? They're behind, but people are still amazed. And to my knowledge, this is still true. The only way to get a CVE to MITRE to publish is through a CGI web form where you put, here's my CVE. And they're doing, they've done 2,500 CVEs that way this year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredibly human driven. So yeah, and I will say that both I will say Lisa is in chat. She says hi. That's Lisa from Microsoft. Yeah, cool. So, you got anything else Rob, what do you got? You
Well,
have
I wanted to just ask a little bit of clarification for the audience, and I've been holding my tongue. So, could you give just the briefest of overviews of C question mark E or C dot E, or if we're doing glob or regex? What is when we say we need a CPE? Why is it that we're not getting? Why does not everything have a CPE? Why do we want to give some things a Perl? Why what is that distinction there?
The difference is how you're going to use the data and how you're going to look
Okay.
at it, right? CPEs are mainly for desktops. They were built when for servers and desktop operating systems.
Hmm.
That's what they were designed for. I mean, the first three are it's either an operating system, it's hardware, or it's application, right? That's the
Hmm.
that's the first letter after the version, right? So that leans into there. So if you're on those, you need the CPE string to be able to identify what's
Hmm.
on your system. OS Query has made this super simple, an amazing tool by Facebook that everybody uses now all over, right? You say, hey, tell me all the software on this machine. Boom, here's a CPE. Take that CPE, do a quick lookup on NVD because they had the CPEs.
Hmm.
CVE.org is becoming better and saying, okay, this CPE string matches these CVEs, so I can infer that these are the vulnerabilities on this system without an issue. And then you just flip it to software development. You do the same thing, right? You say, okay, here's the Perl of everything that's in my code. Let me go and take this
Hmm.
Perl and do a reverse lookup and see what CVEs are there, right? Because we've all been around long enough to know that for the longest time, vulnerability scanners were rule-based, and they could only look for stuff that you could write a rule for. So you
Mhm.
might have 250, 280,000 CVE records in your database, but the big scanners only have 3 to 5% of those CVEs covered by rules, right? Because
Mhm.
A, humans are writing the rules, B, it's not worth the time to look for them, right? So when you move to a lookup-based vulnerability management school way of doing it, you go from only being able to see what your vulnerability scanner has written a direct rule for to being having a full view of every vulnerability of all the software on your network or in your operating system stack.
And Rob, runZero, obviously, we're completely beholden to CPEs every time we do a network scan, right?
Yes. No.
No, no. We do
Uh,
fingerprinting on the fly.
we do. And I want to say every time y'all say CPE, I think customer premises equipment in from
Yeah.
Yeah,
telecommunications because I'm super
exactly.
old.
Right.
So
So,
uh,
so the question is, when you guys do it at runZero, how do you display that information to the end user
for
of
the
what's
platform.
running? Yeah,
So most of our information we do, if we can determine a CPE for a platform, we absolutely do include it
yeah,
because that's super valuable information and it's machine
yeah,
readable and all that good stuff. But we also try to be as human friendly as possible. Um, we also are trying, and this is, I'm sure Todd is, Todd, cover your ears. We're trying to avoid leaning entirely on playing the numbers game with CVE. And this is something I maybe wanted to ask both of y'all about. With it's almost a rite of passage in information security to get your own CVE, right? Which I mean, I have a few, not but no. So do we think that with the in I don't want to use the word inflation, but 27% year over year is what else would you call it?
Right.
Do we see the average value of CVEs from do we see the average value going down, right? Like if CVEs aren't if they're talking about something in the Linux kernel that could never possibly be touched or will never really matter, or people reporting CVEs on just spamming, right? Like saying, "Hey, I
yeah.
found this minor bug. Give me a CVE, please." Do we see the average value of a CVE going down?
I I think that's an interesting question. I don't think that I am of the opinion that CVEs are currency. I've been in the industry for a long time. I've never personally been handed a resume with a CVE on it as a career highlight, right? Like I found
Mm-hmm.
this CVE and this is why you should hire me. Um, I know that that's what people think the issue is, and they think that people are out there farming and looking
Mm-hmm.
for CVEs so that they can bolster their reputation.
Uh,
Um,
I have
I've
a
never.
question here on that.
Oh,
uh,
Do what, Todd?
I have heard of master's cybersecurity programs requiring a CVE to be part of your master's thesis, like an original CVE that you wrote and published.
Really?
Yeah, it's
That's
insane.
interesting.
This came and this has been knocking around in some masters and PhD programs for a couple of years now. Even if I knew which ones it was, I wouldn't say what they are. I think
Sure,
it's
sure,
a
sure, sure.
terrible metric.
Hmm.
Because now the goal, like you're not getting a social engineering degree, which is exactly what a CVE is. I'm getting mitered to publish a cool CVE. But like there is like that is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
But not nearly. I think I'm with you, Jerry, is that I don't think it's nearly as a push for CVEs as many people suspect, right? Um, Linux kernel resisted CVEs at all for
Mm-hmm.
years and years, and then they said, "Fine, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it and we're going to automate it, and they're all going to be awesome, and you're going to love it, and we're going to have a zillion of them." And
Mm-hmm.
wait, no, not like that. Don't give the CVE like that. And every CVE I've seen, like I spot check Linux kernel probably once a month just to like see like
Mm-hmm.
what they've been doing lately. And they all seem real to me. Like Rob says, a lot of times they're in like to actually reach the code path, you have to jump through some hoops. You have to be configured in a certain way, have certain depths like in there to get to it. But they're all real. So like it's not merely every Linux bug gets a CVE. It's every Linux bug with security, every Linux kernel bug with a security implication, which includes denial of service, gets a CVE. So it's still a lot, but it's not nothing. And I'd rather know than not know. And I'm just going to keep filibustering here because I have another thing to say, and that is
Well,
CVEs, like taking a list of CVE as your hit list of this is what I should look for, I think is backwards. I think I should look at my inventory of my assets, however you manage to do that, and then check against known CVEs, not the other way around. I think the other way around is a bizarre way to treat CVEs and is also a way that regulatory and compliance ways do it.
And that comes into this whole numbers game too of, I detect 36,000 CVEs. Oh, well, I detect 72,000. And it's like, but do you detect the quality and the average value, CVEs as currency? Someone said that in chat. Thank you. Decreases, right? Like saying I detect 72,000 CVEs, whereas you only detect a paltry 36,000 is not meaningful if those CVEs are not really applicable in any real world environment.
I mean, so Jay Jacobs is on the call. I saw a chat from him, and you guys had him on last month, I believe. He's done some great work on this. He's when I was at Kenna, we worked with him, and they found something like only 10% of CVEs are ever present on an enterprise network, right? So even if you detect 70,000 CVEs, the chances of them actually being ran on something that you're scanning is very, very little to do, right? Like the hoverboard CVE might have a rule that you can find it, or the coffee machine that you can SSH into might have a CVE, but it's not going to be on anybody's network, hopefully, right? Like,
well, there's a lot of stuff that people just don't even know about on their networks. It's really kind of
exactly. I mean,
and some of that is a
why does my coffee pot
detectability
have SSH?
Yeah. I mean that's the real question, and that's the problem that nobody is solving, and it's the CMDB, right? Like if you wanted to make $1 trillion in security, you go and build a tool to make a complete CMDB. And
hold on, let me write this down. Okay, sorry. No.
you would solve the base. Like I love what runZero doing. They're getting as close to it as about anybody, right? Covering those blind spots. But yeah. The blind spots and the ability to build security programs are always hampered in any organization I've ever worked in with a full CMDB. And that was before you even started throwing on cloud services and SaaS that you don't own, right?
Right. Which I also have to say, just before I forget, I would assume that the coffee pot runs JavaScript. But no, so sorry, I had to. But
no, weirdly, Java beans.
Wow, now we're getting really old. I do like Java though. But to go back, going back to this concept of CVEs being a numbers game, what do we see? There's this sort of, I don't know what you would call it, like negative space where things maybe don't have CVEs, don't have CPEs. There's tons of, I don't want to say minor because I don't want to imply that they're not important, but my coffee pot doesn't have a CPE. It doesn't have any sort of platform identifier. What do we want to do there? Like, just in your opinion?
It needs to have an identifier, right? Like it might be hard to cobble together, but who made it. If it's, coffee underscore pot is the maker, right? And then like what version of the software it's running, especially if they're ever going to come back and patch it, right? Like
they never will.
They never will, but that's all you're asking for when you're asking for an identifier. Like who made the software, what's the name of the software, and what's the version of the software, right?
And we see a huge sort of, again, it's not a problem, it's just the way of the world, but we see what is silk screened on the outside of your device may have nothing to do with who made it. Right. Especially in IP cameras, just to take an example, the sheer number of rebranded IP cameras that are exactly the same internally. Who was it that was talking? I think it was yesterday about how you were getting the generic documentation, right? So that you'll read the documentation for your camera and the printed documentation, and it has no mention of the model number. The images are surprisingly like from angles where you can't see the logo and things like that. So CPE kind of falls apart. And yes, Hikvision has to hide somewhere. Also, actually, you know what? I wish I had done a poll. Next time, remind me. I want to do a poll. I think it's supposed to be pronounced high K vision, but I've never heard anyone say it, so I don't know. But yes, these cameras for those of you in the audience, the Hikvision cameras, high K vision cameras, are generally on they're verboten in certain networks due to regulatory requirements because they are not particularly trusted. So yes, that is. But there's plenty of cameras that are exactly that camera running that exact firmware that are called something else. And and at some point it becomes
this is the problem with CPE, right? Like as Jerry mentioned earlier, CPE was designed for desktop software first and foremost, and then got some other use cases bolted on. The mechanism to get and CPE, this is a little long-winded and lots of M dashes. To get a CPE entry in the dictionary, you must first have a vulnerability in that software, so NVD will add it. So cool. CPE also is an open standard, and anyone can write CPE strings, but only NVD manages the CPE dictionary, which makes some sense, right? You want like a single source of truth of what is a CPE, of what a CPE is for like this Microsoft thing, whatever. But it's very it's much weirder than you think, right? When you start looking at CPEs and like how CPEs come to be. And I've been at places where we've tried. We just like, oh, well, we'll just write our own CPEs. And then everyone hates that because invariably you will come up with a CPE string that conflicts with the NVD dictionary string. And that conflict can happen in the future. So that sucks. So
com
like,
example dot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that like identifying software is, and this is the position, honestly, like of the CVE program, identifying software is beyond the scope of CVE. And as soon as someone comes up with a really good way to identify software and hardware and applications and all of that, CVE would be more than happy to include that as a requirement.
So
but
I think it's
happened yet.
I think it's interesting you say identifying the software isn't, but the CVE record has to tell you what software is vulnerable.
Sure, we got a whole description field for that.
And those go hand to hand, right? And CPE is the best way to programmatically tell you what software is vulnerable now. Like we were talking about the Microsoft vulnerabilities, for example, if they had to take those 30 or 40 CPE strings and turn those into natural reading text, they then have 3 pages worth of descriptions, right?
Which we've got some news to cover here, so I want to make sure we have time to cover this. But I did notice did I see correctly the other day there was like a CPE for some truly ancient version of Windows from like somebody issued it. It was like Windows 3.1 or something. It was insane. I saw that the other day. But which I love. Don't get me wrong. I love that sort of thing. Okay, so we've got some runZero news that we'd like to cover real fast. But Jerry, before we switch to that, could you tell us a little bit, just kind of give us the brief on your talk that's upcoming, and do you know what day and all that?
Yeah, it's at B-Sides Las Vegas. It's the second day of the conference. It's on hiding in plain sight, what CVE records aren't telling you. I'm not exactly sure what time it is, but it'll be on the B-Sides Las Vegas webpage. Please go. It's once again, it's a talk. I am not a bomb thrower. That
sounds like something a bomb thrower would say. Yes.
My ideal is I always try to say, here's the problem I see, here's how I would fix it, right? Like I'm not on the CVE board, but I love the CVE program. I think it has a great place to be. And
You're in the automation working group. I will say that. I will out you for that.
yeah.
I
And the
just,
quality working group, right? Like
yeah.
I'm on two working groups, but so like I try to be in the environment and I'm trying to push forward. So when I talk about CVEs, I always want to talk about them in a way of here's where we're at now. I would like to
Mhm.
push us forward. If you need my help, if you need my technical expertise, please invite me and let's make this better as a community. Because as we saw, it is a community and it is a worldwide thing.
Mhm.
People rely on CVEs every day, and we have to make the program able to be used by everybody.
Yeah.
I definitely, yeah. We are a community. I do love how small the information security community seems sometimes.
Shockingly so.
But pardon?
Shockingly so, I would say.
It really kind of is. Um, all right. So, Jerry, thank you so much. Please stick around. We would love to hear your commentary on some of the news that's coming up.
Yep.
So, runZero news. Todd,
Yes.
I hear that there is,
Yes.
in fact, runZero news.
I heard this from you, Rob.
Really?
Yeah, so recently runZero published an update to the platform that integrates nuclei, and I wanted to throw to you, Rob. What does that mean, and when will we hear more about this?
Oh, well, since you asked, I was completely, I, this came out of nowhere. No, nuclei is a popular tool, open source tool for vulnerability and technology scanning and things like that. And runZero has started to integrate nuclei with the runZero scanner. And it's all very in choked and new and still in beta, all that good stuff. But it's there if you want to try it now. Buyer beware, but it's available in the configuration. And what runZero is doing with this is we are leveraging the nuclei templates. A nuclei template is basically a description of how you should run a specific probe, right? You speak a particular piece of a particular protocol and you send a request and you get a response back. And if this response matches these things, then, assert this thing about the target. And so runZero has started integrating nuclei templates into our vulnerability scanning. And we're doing it in, I think, a really interesting way. Yes, runZero does heart-based nuclei, where we are, unlike maybe, I don't want to use the word naive because that's not quite the correct word, but unlike a simply configured nuclei scan where you just fire everything at everything, runZero actually runs it after our initial fingerprinting scan. So we then narrow down what templates could possibly match, and only run those. So it's a much, because we want to maintain our safety record of not sending traffic that isn't applicable. And
Right.
yes, runZero is we want to be good open source citizens. We are contributing back to the nuclei development with template contributions, code contributions, all sorts of great stuff. Yeah, we really this sounds cheesy, and they're not paying me to say this. I really am proud of how good runZero is as a corporate citizen. That sounds so cheesy, but yes, it is really it is heartwarming. There will be a this will be covered entirely, much more in depth next month at runZero Hour. So please do tune in for that. And now for our rapid response roundup.
Yes.
Todd, rapid response round cube. No, it's just that doesn't quite. That's
Round
not as
round
quite as
cube up.
alliterative as I wanted.
Round
Yeah.
cube and two other things up.
Yes.
Yeah, so we released some rapid responses. By we, I mean almost entirely Rob and his team. And these are pretty good vulns that you're going to want to check out if you run these things on your network. First off is the roundcube webmail bug. Interestingly, so two things about this. One, it is authenticated, so your attack, your population of attackers are going to be people who have or have stolen credentials to like get mail, right?
That doesn't happen though, right? So
Roundcube.
it's okay.
Rarely happens.
Yeah.
Roundcube is weirdly, and the second thing is Roundcube, not weirdly, Roundcube is popular, I found in
Hmm.
European governments. It's
Hmm.
real popular in Brussels for some reason.
Hmm.
Um, it seems fine. Seems like a lovely,
Hmm.
webmail solution. But it's popular there. I found it popular in some like states and localities. I
Hmm.
had to stop myself from saying state, local, tribal, and territorial, which is a thing that just rolls off my tongue. But yeah, you'll see it in kind of like in that kind of level of government too in the US.
Hmm.
So if you work in one of these places, definitely check to make sure that you're updated against this. Um,
Hmm.
we know that like nation state actors really like hitting Roundcube, and because if
Yes.
you own someone's mail, you own them, which is
Yes.
that's the place we're in history today.
Yeah. Well, we've been trying to get, everybody's saying email is dead. It still runs the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, and if you use, I think, Gandhi, Gandi, the
Mhm.
European hosting provider, they all of their, if you have your email hosted with them,
It
you've got
ships
Roundcube, even if you don't know
with a
it.
lot of like out of the box hosting stuff. So like I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
control there's like cPanel I think also ships with this. So
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
next
So
slide, please.
next slide, please.
Yes,
So,
Screen Connect. This popped out for me because ConnectWise Screen Connect is still very popular. Also,
mhm,
it's just kind of everywhere
mhm,
for remote access. And notably, it was implicated a few months back in a Treasury Department compromise in the
mhm,
U.S. And that definitely was espionage driven. So if
mhm,
you're the sort that attracts the attention of espionage agents, you should make sure your Screen Connect stuff is up to date all the time. This is something you can set to auto patch. The auto patch tends to work pretty great. So turn that on. Don't take Jerry's advice and manually test every patch. Just do it. Just patch it out.
just it. Um, no, no, definitely testing.
Yes.
And also, and of course, as I should have said earlier, all of these rapid responses are in your runZero console. They are running
Yep.
automatically. So if you are affected by any of these, you will in fact know, because.
Yep. And then finally, we published a query real quick on how to find a potentially compromised ASUS router,
I've heard ASUS, I've heard ASUS.
ASUS.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce anything um, on these
It's right
routers.
by Hikvision. Yeah.
If you happen to notice SSH running on TCP port 53282, go yank the cable out of that thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's compromised. This
Yes.
is all based on some excellent research from our pals at Gray Noise. Census also threw in, and Shamble from runZero also threw in on this. So this was like a
Hmm.
real group effort from that clutch of cybersecurity providers. So which is pretty fun.
Yes. Yes.
So there was a variety of ways to compromise these things, and Gray Nice found it through I want to say their like LLM style AI
Mm.
thing that they run
Mm.
on a bunch of their traffic analysis. So that's this. That's it. Oh, and ASUS actually has great routers. Raves, Jerry Gamblin of Cisco. And, in the chat anyway. So that's
I
I think
yeah.
ASUS routers are fine. Everybody gets owned. That's what it comes down
Right. Yeah, no, it happens. I did do some reverse engineering on a brand of router that will remain unnamed, but
to.
and it was not ASUS. I want to make that clear. But it was really more just like RCE with bits of router in it. It was really kind of sad. So, yes, yes, there's
Mhm.
not always high quality there, but ASUS, no, pretty good. Okay, cool.
And thanks for trying to get me fired, Todd.
Yeah, no problem.
Meraki is great. It is not a consumer. It is not a consumer Wi-Fi router. We do not have consumer Wi-Fi routers.
No. Well, it
And
depends on who the consumer is, right?
Yes.
I know we have
So,
some pretty beefy gear in our houses.
mm,
So
mm.
I think that's it.
So It is. It is. So thank you, Jerry, so much for joining
Jerry,
us.
super rad. Thank you so much for showing
Yes.
up. Thank you
No,
for
this is
Yeah.
great. Thank you guys
about
so much.
CVEs
Yep.
and vulns and MCPs and LLMs and data
Hmm.
quality and CVE and all that jazz.
CVEs and CPs and CWEs and dogs and cats living together, mass
Yes,
hysteria.
exactly.
And so, yes, please join us next month where we will be talking all about the new scanning of vulnerabilities with runZero and all sorts of new cool runZero features and rapid response roundups. And,
Next month, we're expecting a fairly deep dive into this nuclei stuff we kind of touched on
yes.
today. So if you're into open source and into vuln scanning and into runZero, check it out.
And
And
Nuclei
if you
has
want
the
to hear me
best
nerd about it,
CVE to actual scanning rules on the market. They've kind of surpassed Metasploit recently. And if you want to see if there's a vulnerability or a CVE, just look for the CVE ID in the Nuclei templates. That's what I do, and I'm a super big fan of the project. So I thought I'd
Yep.
obviously I'm a super big fan too, but with the exceeding Metasploit thing, you come in at the last minute with fighting words and then dip out, right?
All right.
Like, yeah.
for the use case, for the use case.
Cool.
So thank you, everyone. It was a joy, and we will see you all next month.